Hey guys, be sure to press like and subscribe. Today I want to tell a little bit of a different story. You know, usually we talk about the Philippines or we talk about different things that happen in the Philippines. And my sister and I talked about this like a couple years ago. She actually did a video on it many years ago. And it was because we talked about it. And she didn't know that I had seen the same thing that she had seen. So it's kind of a cool story because it's supported by other people. And also, my father said that he had heard things in the house when the house was totally empty, people walking around and things like that. And that's what makes the story kind of cool because it's a factual account from three different people. Okay, my sister, like I said, my sister lived through it and saw the same things when she was younger, up until her old, I believe her teenage years. She even saw it. So it makes it kind of more factual. I never got to ask my brother whether he saw it because we don't talk anymore, and we'll just leave that one there. But my father said that he had witnessed sounds in the house of people going up and down the stairs when there was nobody in the house, and he knows that nobody was in the house, and it was just kind of cool. But anyway, I'm going to start my story. This starts, my memory of like when I was a kid goes back to when I was around 2, because I remember the diaper truck. If you remember the old diaper trucks, because they had cloth diapers, they used to pull up in front of the house back in the 60s and pick up all the dirty diapers and then wash them and then return you another stack or two, a couple of days later. And, you had cloth diapers. And I remember my dad canceling the diaper man. That was probably one of my first memories. I can remember another time getting bit by hornets and stuff when I was fairly young too, playing in the sandbox. So it's probably right around that same time. But the diaper thing pretty much puts a timeline on it of like when I was like around 2. And this probably starts like when I was around, probably like around, let's see, I'll say 3. Okay, I'm just guessing. Okay, my dad was already divorced. He had a bed in his room, 2 beds in the room, like Dick Van Dyke style, where he slept in one and my mother would sleep in the other. But they were still in the room, even though my dad had gotten divorced, and it was still set up that way. And my dad was kind of like depressed about my mother leaving, and really depressed about it, and it kind of hit him really hard. But anyhow, this takes place during that time. That's why I mentioned this. Okay. Anyway, the room that I lived in at night, there was nothing in there, like no lights, except if you had a full moon or a partial moon or something like that, or the stars. So what would happen is at night, the room would be super, super dark. And I remember waking up one night with the feeling that something was in the room. And I could kind of feel like there was something over in the closet. And the closet was open. It had no doors, but it had 2 sections in it where you could like walk off into one side, and there was a wall there covering it. And then on the other side, there was a wall. And I remember seeing like this dark blob, like looking like a human coming out of the closet, and it was darker than dark. It's the only way that you could explain it. It was darker than dark. And it would walk over to the bed I was sleeping in. And it wasn't a nightmare because I used to remember pinching myself and saying, is this real? Like what am I seeing here? Like, and I keep looking at it, keep watching it, and like, yeah, it's there. And I saw it. And I remember going over to my dad's room and telling my dad, and he says, well, you can lay on the other bed for a while, and you're probably just having a bad dream or whatever, and in 5 minutes you can go back there, but I want you to go back into your bedroom. I guess he was fearful that I was going to be sleeping over there every night in with him, so he didn't want me to stay there too long. So anyway, my dad sends me back into the other room, and I wasn't like terrified of it, but I didn't feel comfortable with it either, as being a kid. And I remember like as a kid praying, because that's what my dad taught me to do, and praying that it would go away, but it didn't. It just didn't go away. It would keep visiting me off and on. And I remember later on, maybe it was like a year or 2 later, and this happened many times. Okay, so I'm not sure how many times, because I was very young, and your memory just doesn't remember everything, but I remember it happened quite a few times. And I remember about a year later, or so, seeing it again and going over to my dad's room. And at that time, my dad was sleeping with one bed in the bedroom, okay? And I'm not sure what he did with the other bed, but I remember going over there, and he says, okay, just go to bed, go turn the light on in the bathroom, and the light will come on underneath your door, so you'll have some light in your room, so it won't bother you. And it was kind of strange, because after a while he got up to go to the bathroom or whatever, and he flicked the light off. And when he flicked the light off, probably within about an hour or half an hour, I remember seeing something hanging right over my bed, looking down at me, and it was like a dark, featureless thing, just kind of like getting really close to me, like coming down towards me, looking at me. And I pulled the covers over my head. It didn't touch me, or it didn't make any noises or anything like that I could hear. And then after a while, I peeked out, and it was gone. Now, I was awake, okay, and I know I was awake. I was positively awake when I saw this, because I had seen it many times, okay? And I remember at some point there was a book left in my room from my sister or my brother, and it was Alice in Wonderland of all books, okay? And I remember drawing that thing that I had saw in the book. And it was kind of scary, and I just closed the book, and I'm not sure if I had seen it again after that or not. I don't recall, so I honestly can't say that after, like, when I closed the book, that was closing the book on whatever this thing was. But anyhow, I remember after my dad had passed away, talking to my sister about this, and when my dad had passed away, I remember finding that Alice in Wonderland book too. Well, actually, it was before he had passed away, and I remember it was just before he had passed away. I remember opening that book and seeing that book, and I was like it just like wow, like it brought me right back to when I was a little kid again, and seeing that. And I remember after my dad had passed away, talking to my sister about this, and my sister was like, wow, I had the same thing happen to me, Stevie, when I was a kid, in the same room. And she did a video about it, and it was kind of cool. I'm gonna see if I can find the video, and I'll put the link in the description, okay? And you can watch that video. It's fascinating, because later on, my father, when I talked to him about it at some point before he had passed away, long before he had passed away, I believe, he had told me that he had heard things walking around and opening doors inside the house, even though the house was locked. Now, it wasn't me, it wasn't my sister, because she lived really far away, and it wasn't anybody else, because they didn't have keys. So we don't know who it was who was walking around upstairs in the house. But he said this had happened several times. And at one point he even left the door open. And he said that something dark or whatever, he felt was at the door of the bedroom while he was sleeping. And he could almost kind of like feel it. And he said he heard it go down the stairs. So even he believed like that the house was semi kind of haunted or something like that. Now, he had built the house with his brother, my uncle Mackie. And it just, between three people now, we have three people that have had similar experiences in that house. And that house has long been sold and everything, and it's just kind of like a fascinating story, and I wanted to kind of share that. I have another experience, many experiences, not like this one, but different, okay? Kind of, I guess you could say, kind of paranormal experiences, which I'll say in another story. And being a Christian, I mean, I don't know what to believe about this. okay, because I am a Christian. But I just kind of find it fascinating because in 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 some churches, if you bring up stuff like this, they look at you cross-eyed. But if you bring up stuff like this in a Pentecostal church, um, you'll get more people talking about it because other people have had experiences like this or whatever. And it's kind of fascinating when you leave like the Catholic Church or you leave the Baptist church and you go into like a Pentecostal church because they believe in a lot of different things that other churches don't believe in. They believe like in prophecy. They believe in people speaking in tongues and many other things. And I've talked to people in the Pentecostal church about a lot of this stuff. And this is something, a lot of people can't explain. But I'm going to do another story someday if this one does okay and the trolls don't eat me up. I'm going to do another story and talk about that a little bit. Okay, and we'll see how this story goes. But anyway, guys, I got my phone ringing on the other end, and we'll talk about that other story some other time. Okay, guys? And God bless.